All right, hey, gonna do chapters 8 and 9 here in this video. Might be a touch longer than usual, but try to get it all done in one instead of splitting it up like last unit. Gonna talk about the Roman Empire. Um, we talked about the fall of the Republic. You know, the power base and the power being spread along at least the 100 senators, or the plebeian assembly and the Senate, the tribunes and the council, and some over those 500 years, some variation of that. But by the time we get to Caesar, and then we get to Octavius, who's going to become Caesar Augustus, obviously all that's going to change. And so all the power of Rome is going to rest in the emperor. And so we have that. And so the height of the Roman world is really going to be this 200 years of peace, and it's going to be known as Roman Pax Romana, which is the Roman peace. And so from roughly 100 CE to 200 CE, Rome is going to control everything. You're going to have the period of the emperor overtake everything. Rome has carried out its conquest at least around the Mediterranean. Now, obviously, Rome is still pushing forward into the Germanic tribes and into England, but as far as Mesopotamia and Spain and Italy itself, it's going to be free of bandits, and trade is going to boom, and everything's going to be good. And so because of this peace and prosperity, I think a lot of people overlook the abuse of power and the loss of power that that Rome's going to suffer, right? So Rome is an empire, and even as Rome is a republic, it's going to be very rich and powerful, and as glorious as any. And really, as far as Roman empires go, the Roman Empire is probably the biggest, right? But it's also horribly oppressive. It's imperialistic. It conquers people. It turns them into slaves. It's horrible to its poor. Rebellions are harshly dealt with. And so you have that, right? Once Octavian eliminates Marcus Antony, he's going to take full control of Rome. He's going to get rid of his political rivals, and he's going to set up an imperiorship that deals with heredity. And so oftentimes in Rome, if you didn't have a son, you would adopt somebody, even later in life, that you would see as a suitable successor to your empire. And so Octavian's going to do that. He's going to leave Rome to his successors, right? Octavian is going to be, of course, he's going to be awful careful not to use that idea of king, but he's going to refer to himself as first citizen, and he's going to keep the Senate in place for the look of the republic, but really they're going to lose their power. And Octavian is going to be appointed consul for life, and then tribune for life, and so he's going to take over. And so those checks on power that were in place during the Republic are going to go away during the Empire. The Senate's going to give Octavian this title of Augustus, and we're going to call him Caesar Augustus, or Augustus Caesar, however you want to refer to that, meaning semi-divine. They're going to name the month of August after, and they're going to soldiers are going to swear loyalty to Augustus and not to the Republic. And while the illusion of the Republic is still there, it's still just going to be him in power, right? And once one person does it, the next person is going to demand the same powers. And so the successor to Augustus is going to demand the same appointment as tribune and consul for life, and maintaining those powers, right? And one of the reasons that this power grab by Augustus is allowed is because of the prosperity, right? He's going to oversee this long period of peace, obviously not the full 200 years, but the start of this long peace, and life is good. And he's going to he's going to reform some of the lands, kind of take some of the Gackus brothers ideas, give some land to some poor people. He's going to eliminate taxes on farming and he's going to start to pay officials through taxation, which is actually going to lessen the burden, a tax burden on the poor. He's going to create a messenger system that's going to allow messages to get all throughout the empire. The roads are going to be improved, right? And so after years of civil war with Marcus and Sulla, things are good and everybody's just happy, right? The only really downside to the Augustan emperorship is in Germany. Rome faces its largest military defeat, in which about 20,000 Roman soldiers are defeated on the frontier by the German tribes. And so during Augustus, his reign, the expansion of Rome comes to a stop. And so, I mean, there is some further expansion, like in England or whatever, but at a later date, the nonstop marching forward of this Roman legion and the Roman Empire comes to an end. And so when Augustus dies, he's worshipped as a god. And so ultimately, when we look at the dynasties of this period of Pax Romana, you're going to have three. You're going to have the Julian dynasties, the Flavian dynasties, and the period of the five good emperors. And so we'll go through those. Augustus dies, and his son Tiberius takes over, who does fine job. But under Tiberius, you have some changes that you can read about in your notes or read about in the text. And his son Gaius takes over, and Gaius is actually known as Caligula, and Caligula is really the first example of a poor emperor we have, because we have Caesar and he's not in power for very long, and then Augustus does a great job, and Tiberius does a pretty decent job, and then Caligula takes over, and this guy is just he just feels like he's been raised the entire life to take over, and so he's cruel and he's a megalomaniac, and he focuses on himself, and he looks at like public executions and shows as forms of entertainment. He creates games in which people are executed, right? He stages a military victory in Gaul, which had already been conquered, and he gives himself a triumph, and he makes enemies with the Senate with this behavior, because he moves away from that idea of Romanus, where he's taking on the personal glory and using it at personal wealth as himself, right? Claudius follows Caligula, and he's very smart, and he finishes the conquest of England. He ultimately gets killed by his wife, who wants her son from a previous marriage to be emperor, and that's but Claudius's son that takes over is Nero, and Nero is not a horrible emperor, but he kind of falls into that line of Caligula, where he's going to put himself above Rome itself, and he's best known for the tale of when Rome catches fire. He's playing his fiddle, and so Nero fiddles as Rome burns. But in reality, he's building supplies for his supplies and shelter for his people. But again, Nero commits suicide after losing a bunch of political support. And so that main idea between Nero and Caligula is the fact that they turn away this idea of Romanus, where they're not thrifty. They spend wildly, but they're not spending wildly on roads and infrastructure and aqueducts. They're spending on things that glorify themselves, right? after Nero's death, you have this civil war that breaks out in the Vespians, who was who was a Roman general, takes control, and he has a relatively short dynasty for him and his two sons. And while he doesn't necessarily have a legal claim to the throne, he is supported by the Senate, and so the army supported him, and he looked like an option of peace. And he actually does a pretty good job here. Like Vespian, he balances the budget. He starts a public works program that's going to ultimately build the Colosseum, and he dies, and his son takes over. Titus, does a pretty decent job. He has some major problems with Mount Vesuvius exploding and having a fire in Rome and a major epidemic, but he does his best. And then Domination is his brother, and he's not very good. And again, he kind of creates this this sense of fear or instability, and so he becomes very paranoid, and then he's killed, which raises the question: are you really paranoid if they're trying to kill you? But anyways, he brings it into the Flavian dynasty. And so then we move into this period of the 5 good emperors, where all these emperors do really good, and they're going to put Rome and Roman values above their own selves. And one of the things that's interesting, each one of these leaves Rome to somebody other than their male heir, all until we get to the very end. Marcus Aurelius, who his son Commodius becomes emperor. And if you guys are his movie buffs, if you've ever seen the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe, Commodius, who's played by Joaquin Phoenix, is the emperor of Rome during this time, right? And Commodius, again, is just the typical poor emperor that uses his own power for personal gain, right? He's in the movie Gladiator. And then we have the Severans, and the Severan dynasty is I don't know, it's going to be the end of Pax Romanus, because the German tribes and the Persians are going to rise up and start to invade and sack Rome and cause problems. And the Roman the Roman Empire, the Roman military at this point is struggling and weakened to the point that it can't resist, right? So we'll go skip some of this here. What really happens? All right, well, a couple things happen before. You would fight in the army, and when you have conquest, you would get land or you would get plunder, and that would be your pay. When Augustus takes over, he reorganizes the army to move away from a citizen's army to a professional standing army. And so, like, it's a regular job. You're paid with salary. If you make it 25 years, you end up with a 13-year salary retirement plan. And so, like, it's attractive to join the army, if you're coming from modest means, but you really don't have that huge motivation to go out and conquer new lands, because it's not going to benefit you. But one of the things it does is that soldiers from the provinces, people that are going to join the military from outside of Rome or outside of the Italian Legion, are going to come into Rome, and they're going to come into the army, and they're going to learn Latin. And so they're supposed to be able to take orders and respond to orders in Latin. And so military families from outside of Rome become kind of the norm, and it's a way to advance in Roman society. These provinces of Rome typically would go through what we would refer to as assimilation patterns, right? So typically, like, right after they're conquered, there's going to be some kind of a resistance or rebellion, and that's typically going to be put down with pretty tremendous force. And then that next generation of elites are going to start to become integrated into into the provisional government's offices. And so they're going to start to have some kind of a connection to Rome. And so these ambitious families are going to see that, hey, this government and the Roman way is a way to advance. And so the families start to make sure that their sons know Latin. The locals are going to join the army. And so all of a sudden Roman wealth and prestige is going to start to trickle into the provinces within the first generation and a half. And so then the Roman amenities like aqueducts and public baths and roads and messenger systems and entertainment is going to start to build in, and all of a sudden luxuries and money are going to win over, and assimilation will typically happen. And then after a few generations, the conquered people are going to just see themselves as Romans. We talked a little bit earlier about Romans not necessarily being philosophers or great thinkers, but they're wonderful architects and engineers, and they're going to build roads and aqueducts and have indoor plumbing and all of that stuff. But really the most of the people in Rome are going to be poor farmers. They might be seasonal laborers that go and work for periods building roads or whatever. But really 1% is going to be that elite that's going to have access to any type of politics or any of the political power, the scraps that are left behind after the emperor, right? From 1 CE to 400 CE, with no new wealth coming into Rome, the rich are going to get richer, and the poor are going to continue to get poorer. So what's really gonna cause Rome to fall? Well, obviously you're gonna have a lack of revenue coming in after Augustine and after the excuse me here and after the defeat of the Roman legions in Germany. But from 200 around 200 CE, all of a sudden there starts to be pressure put on Rome from the outside, and this is going to be kind of twofold in the fact that you're going to have the Huns come out of the Eurasian steppe, and they're going to start to push some of these Germanic tribes into places like Russia or into Eastern Europe, and that's going to start to put pressure on the tribes that were most assimilated or closest to Rome. And so you're going to have like the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths and the Vandals and those types of tribes start to try to get into Rome as a form of protection or under Roman protection, and so it's going to start to cause some problems. Another thing is just political instability. We're going to go through 26 emperors in a period of 50 years, with 25 of those emperors being assassinated. And so the guards, the emperor's guards, would actually sell the emperorship to the highest bidder, and so people are going to go. Persia's going to rise up. They're going to take over the Middle East. We talked about the Germanic tribes are going to become more organized. Romans are going to lack leadership. If you have 26 leaders in 50 years, you don't have any type of stability over the long haul, and just the size of the empire is going to cause problems. So then in 284, we're going to have a new emperor come about, Diocletian. And he's going to take over the throne. And so his idea is that he's going to split the empire into two parts. And so he's going to take over the eastern half of the empire, and he's going to have a co-emperor with him that's going to overrule the west. And so it's a big job for one person, but we'll do that. And then each emperor will have co-emperors below them, kind of junior emperors that will oversee part of that area. And then as the co-emperors, the co-emperors, as they resign or they get old and they die off, the junior emperors would take over. And so it would be kind of a training process. And it's a pretty good idea, and it lasts for one rotation. But after that, Diocletian retires, and his junior emperors take power, and they choose their emperors. But then once that happens, then Rome is going to fall into civil war on that second transition. And so in 312 CE, the Roman general Constantine is going to kind of defeat all of these other emperors or co-emperors or junior emperors that are vying for power, and he's going to reunite Rome. He's going to unite Rome. And so Constantine's going to do a lot of things. He's going to stabilize weights and measures and do all this thing, but he's also going to be the first emperor to accept Christianity. The myth is that he has this dream before this major battle that if he would accept Christianity, then the God would grant him a victory. And so like he's going to accept Christianity. And when he does that, he converts to Christianity. Other elite Romans around him that are looking for political favor are going to do the same as well. And then in 324, he's going to move the capital of Rome from the city of Rome to a new city in Constantinople. He's going to found this new city in Constantinople, which is, over there kind of by it's east of Greece, in between Greece and Turkey. This is going to be the home of the Eastern Roman Empire, and it's going to last until 1453 CE, when it's going to fall to the Turks. But that's going to be the split. And so he's going to have the Eastern Roman Empire with Constantinople, and then you're going to have a junior emperor there in Rome that's going to run into problems. They're going to lose their tax base. They're going to run into problems with the Germanic tribes, and then to kind of to do everything else, you're going to have some problems. We're going to have to jump back into history a little bit here, but like the Roman territory of Palestine, which is modern day Israel, is going to cause a lot of problems for Rome. Typically the Romans were pretty cool with other people's gods. Like, they would allow other religions and other gods to come into the pantheon, as long as, Jupiter was the king god. But when they conquer Palestine and they run into this group of people called the Hebrews, that practice monotheism, it causes them problems, because if you're monotheistic, you can't have other gods, right? You just have one God. And so, the Jews resisted that idea of the Roman gods. And so the Jews would face taxation, and they refused to pay lip service to the Roman gods, and they have uprisings, and the Romans send in huge legions to put down the Jewish uprisings. And in 663 they had this uprising that takes 4 years to put down, and the Romans destroy the temple, right? And then there's another uprising around 132, and the Romans come in and they just disperse the Jews all throughout the Roman Empire, into Persia, all over North Africa and whatever. And so, the Hebrews are going to be vanquished from their homeland until 1948, following the Second World War. And so, even going back a little bit further than that, from roughly the year 0 to 33, we have a revolutionary by the name of Jesus of Nazareth, that comes about. And he's just, he's a local, he's a preacher. He goes around talking, and, he's telling everybody the ways to heaven. And the Jewish, elites, or the powerful Jews at that time, didn't like Jesus. They ultimately have him crucified, and the Romans, it's not like the Romans had it out for Jesus. They just they were just there, and they were the powers that did that. And Jesus was claiming to be the Messiah, and Rome has probably executed, I don't know, hundreds of messiahs by that point, right? So Jesus lives from 0 to 33, and the major sources of his life are going to be compiled in the 4 Gospels, right? You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that are going to write about Jesus, and Jesus is obviously going to start the religion of Christianity. And so somewhere around 90 CE, those Gospels are written down. They were transmitted orally for a long period of time, and then they're compiled. And so the ideas of Christianity come about just like here. They're listed here on your notes. Jesus is the outcome of the union between the Holy Spirit and the Virgin Mary. He's the Son of God, but he's also God himself. He begins to preach. He gets arrested, crucified, and then returns from dead, right? And those people that believe in him are granted everlasting life. And so, to begin with, early Christians, for the first 60 years, 100 years after the death of Christ, Christians are going to fight amongst themselves about the proper way to organize the religion. And then we're going to have Saint Paul, who was actually a Roman tax collector and a persecutor of the Jews. He's going to have a conversion on his way to Damascus, right? And Christ is going to come and stand before him and ask him why he was persecuting, and Paul's going to become the major organizer of the early Christian faith. Early Christians argue over, could anybody be saved, or is it just Jews, or could it be Gentiles as well? And because of this work of St. Paul, the movement is opened up to not just the Hebrews and the Jewish people, but also people of other faiths and backgrounds, right? And so before the conversion of Constantine, Christians were going to go around and they're going to act as missionaries, and they're going to go around and try to spread the faith. And it causes a little bit of problems in Rome, not too many, but they kind of deal with it just like they deal with anything else. They would arrest the rebel rousers, and they would persecute them. And so your assignment here is looking at Christianity and its relationship with monotheism and its relationship to Rome, and why does monotheism cause Rome so many problems? But when Constantine converts, this new religion all of a sudden is tied to political power, and so like the elites of Rome are going to switch over to Christianity, because that's where the thing is. And so for the next 100 years, from 300 to 400, Christianity becomes in vogue in the Roman Empire, and anybody is going to be Christians, right? And so the people that are Christians or bishops they're working in the early church, they're going to be appointed to key positions within the empire, and Christianity is going to grow in importance and in influence. Obviously, the most important bishop is going to be the one that's located in Rome. You're also going to have bishops in Jerusalem, Damascus, Alexandria, and over time these ideas are going to these places are going to fall into the hands of Muslims once we get into the birth of Islam. And so the one that's going to stick around is Rome, and that ultimately is going to be the leader of the Catholic Church, and there's going to be the Pope as the father of the church, right? And we can let you kind of read over that. As Constantine is a Christian and other Roman emperors become Christian as well, they're going to move away from building temples to Roman gods, and they're going to start to erect churches. They're going to start to take some of the traditional Roman holidays and convert those into Christian holidays, like December the 25th had been a festival for the sun god. And all right, so now let's make that Christmas, and that will be the birth of Christ. Or Easter has always been celebrated as the spring equinox across different pagan religions. All right, well now let's take that, or let's take that spring equinox, and we'll celebrate that as the Christ rising from the tomb in Easter. And so that's one way to gain converts. We dealt with that. It takes about 100 years for Romans to give up their gods, and we have that. 380, Christianity becomes the official religion of Rome. Okay, so what of anything does Christianity have to do with the fall of Rome? Well, historians are going to disagree on a lot of this. Some are going to say nothing. Some are going to say that Christianity probably preserved Rome for a period of time. From my understanding, the two things that I'll take away from it is that, like, in Roman society, children's obedience to their parents was very important. Like, your family was very important of who you were from, right? And so, like, with Christianity, if kids were going to convert to Christianity and parents didn't, that was a huge move away from traditional Roman values. The other thing that's going to cause problems with the Roman society is that Roman society was such a class-based society and wealth-based society that you definitely had the haves, the people that were more important and the people that were not important. And so, you had the patricians versus the plebes. And then eventually, you just have the wealthy against the poor. And so forth. But then in the eyes of in Christianity, you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself, and everybody's equal before the eyes of God. And so that's going to do away with that idea of social rank and prestige, which is going to cause some problems. So anyways, 476 is gonna be the official date that the Western Roman Empire is gonna fall. 1453 is going to be the date that the Eastern Roman Empire is going to fall. And so, hey, what are some of these ideas? Why is Rome going to fall apart? We have a list here. Rome's going to grow corrupt over time. Absolutely. You're going to have emperors and loss of political power with the people and political checks and balances. You're going to have barbarian cultures that are going to start to infiltrate on the edges. The Vandals and the Ostrogoths are going to conquer large portions of the Roman Empire before they get to Rome. They're given territories within Rome as long as they're, where they're, hey, you can control this area as long as you don't attack, the main city here. People will point to polytheism or the turning away from Roman gods and traditional values as one of these reasons, or just this lack of political unity. The other thing that really could pop up here is the lack of the Roman tax base. When Augustus's troops are defeated in Germany and the expansion of Rome comes to an end, the Western Roman Empire struggles to generate money because they had always generated money through conquest. And so you have a 400-year period in which new money is not coming into the empire, and you don't have enough global trade to stimulate an empire this size. And so that loss of a tax base is going to lead to a weakening of military force, which is going to lead to make you more susceptible to foreign conquest, right? We talked about that. So the Huns are going to come out of the central steppe and they're going to push on those Gothic tribes and the Germanic tribes that are on let's say the northern border of the Roman Empire, and that's going to put more pressure on those tribes to get either into the protection of Rome or at least away from the Huns. And so some of these tribes are going to move into the Balkans, which are just right across the Adriatic Sea from Rome or from Italy, and that's going to cause problems. And they're heavily taxed, and they're going to raise up against the Romans, and they're going to sack Rome a number of times. 410, you're going to have a Gothic army that's going to take Rome, that's going to sack Rome. And to get them to leave, the Roman emperor is going to give this army the territory of Gaul, which is modern day France, and they're going to take all of France, and they're going to move into Spain as well. And so you have these Goths are going to be called the Visigoths, the Roman Goths, right? And so 440, the Huns are going to arrive in Italy, led by Attila the Hun, and the Pope is going to bribe them to leave Rome alone. And so then Attila dies in 443, and the Huns are ultimately defeated by the Romans and the Goths that join up. But then in 455, the Vandals are going to had settled in North Africa, are going to sail across the Mediterranean, and they're going to attack Rome. And then ultimately in 476, the Ostrogoths are going to invade Italy. They're going to take all of Italy. They're going to conquer Rome for the final time. And the Ostrogoth king Odoacer is going to name himself king of Italy. And so he's going to conquer Italy. The emperor and Constantine, the Roman emperor and Constantine, doesn't respond militarily, and they have basically an agreement that Odoacer is going to renege on, which he says, hey, you can rule the West, you can rule Italy as long as you pledge allegiance to the Roman Empire from Constantinople, and Odoacer agrees to that, but doesn't necessarily dictate that, right? Odoacer is killed by Theodoric, who had actually besieged the city of Constantinople, and the Roman emperor, Eastern Roman emperor, is like, hey, why don't you go conquer Italy, and you can just be king over there. And so he does. And so Theodoric rules for almost 30 years, giving this a new stability 500 CE. Rome is no longer really part of the Roman Empire, but it's going to call itself, still going to refer to itself as Rome. We'll learn when we talk about the Byzantines that Justinian is going to go back and reconquer Italy roughly around 455, and then he's going to face problems at home and plague, and he's going to lose control of Italy again. So really, the Roman Empire is now going to just be that Byzantine Empire that's based out of Constantinople. They're going to refer to themselves as Romans, but their culture is going to take on a definitely a more Greek influence than the Italian Roman Empire. And so that's going to get us through the Roman Empire there. Hopefully we picked up a couple things that you didn't know beforehand. And we'll come back, we'll talk about Byzantium and the Eastern Roman Empire and the birth of Islam, and then we'll just move on from there. So I will see you guys in the next lesson. Thanks.